and welcome to PM Express, and we're looking at Ghana's economy today. The Minister of Finance have painted a really rosy picture of how the economy is doing. The argument has been that it's not reflecting in our pockets. But what I want us to find out in this show is that it seems as if we've set a certain yardstick or a certain benchmark. And, ignorantly, we all follow this benchmark. And then when we hit it, well, fine. Because it's all about inflation, GDP growth, inflation, GDP growth. And that's what we all seem to be excited about. So any minister comes in and, they would let you know that inflation is heading the right direction, debt to GDP is heading the right direction, and, those who follow whichever party it's in power are excited about it. But then the issue is, jobs that you wake up in the morning and you're an accountant, and that there are firms out there looking for accountants. You wake up in the morning and you are a veterinary, surgeon, and there are clinics looking for veterinary surgeons, carpentry, whatever it is. We don't seem to focus on skills to labor to say, look, this is the skills and these are the labor. We sort of keep our eye on the mark, and there's lots of big English and lots of technicalities and statistics that, truth be told, sometimes even I can grasp it, let alone the proverbial man in the trotro. Today we're going to look at the economy, the English version and the pocket version. English one seems fine, but the pocket economy, how is it? How is your pocket? Monthly wages, inflation has come down. Has your rent reduced? Has your lorry fare reduced? Is it taking you, 10%, 5% longer before it runs out? What actually is happening on the ground? Because as the account say, I grow any firm. My name is Nana Ansakwa, the fourth chief of the very little Republic of Akwamu Edumasa. When I come back, we're talking economics with people who understand what the figures mean. Don't go. Well, thank you very much for staying. We're looking at Ghana's economy, heading towards the right direction, growing the right direction, and indeed growing, which we all want to hear. With me in the studio is Kwesi Boti, who is an economic analyst at Data Bank. Joining us later on the phone will be Dr. Lord Mensah, senior lecturer, University of Ghana Business School. But before we go on, Courage, you're welcome.
Thank you, Nana.
Good, welcome. Let's hear some insights from the finance minister to set the conversation rolling.
The key thing for us in this office is sustainability, whether we have the resources to pay for it. And when you see the explanation given on the primary balance, so it doesn't really matter irrespective of what it is. You can see efforts towards moving the matrix such that we really are trying hard not to borrow to support borrowing. And I think that's an important story in and of itself. I suspect even the rebasing is going to even give us a bigger and give us technically more capacity to borrow more. But what is really critical is the payments relative to revenue. So then we come back to, how much we can get our revenue bolstered. Going forward, we'll be focusing on expanding the economy and creating more opportunities for all of us Ghanaians to be able to operate. And in a sense, we met sort of our key macroeconomic targets in 2017 and successfully completed the IMF fourth review program. We outperformed the deficit targets of 6.3% to 6% from 9%. We reduced the total debt to GDP ratio. With regards to IMF in December 2018, that's a commitment by the presidency. I don't know, I know we have some two or so prior actions we need, and about maybe 5 or so and structural bank matters that we need to be able to make to be able to do the April 9th board meeting, and we are committed to doing that, and we will do that. Then the rest of the year will be ahead of us. But I think one of the key issues really, it's the ministry working together with GRA and the Ghanaian people to really boost up our revenues. That's key. We reduce the total debt to GDP ratios to under 70%. We exceeded the annual real GDP growth target of 6.3%.
Well, thank you very much for staying tuned, and go straight to Courage, and he's an economic analyst. So just get your preliminary comment on the statement that was delivered.
Oh, thank you, Nanai, and good evening to our listeners. It's a privilege sitting by you now.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and good evening to my friends and colleagues, everybody watching. Now to the substantive issues. I think on the whole, the approach, trying to be open and transparent to Ghanaians about what our economy looks like, and then the media men who are the fourth arm of government that are supposed to project the development to the whole populace for everybody to know really what's happening. I think it's a step in the right direction that the minister decided to get the press around to ask him a few questions and make a presentation to the Ghanaians. I think the fact put out there is really not lost on any of us. These are things that have been said over and over throughout the year. We've been monitoring the development from beginning of the year, when they came to power, through the first quarter, all through to the final quarter, and where we are now. We've seen the fiscal performances. The general trend had been revenue shortfalls. And the response from government to cut expenditure in response. The focus on life-sustaining programs and then measures, policies that are put across to help the so-called ordinary masses on the street, and then to make life easier for the business community. Really, that is what the focus has been on. So broadly, I wasn't surprised by anything that was put out there. It largely speaks to the kind of things we know about the economy. I would just want to add that I think we'll go into the substantive issues, that for every economy, our history, our past, has told us that we've always attempted some stability. But then just when we are approaching that stability, the stage for which we are all set to accelerate, grow the economy, and then let everybody benefit, either election pops up or some indiscipline of a sort comes up, and then we mess everything up and we start a cycle all over again. That seemed to be our economic story over time. So for everything we are singing about today, or the minister is talking about today, that seems so sweet, so palatable, like you said, the English economy is looking so good. How we could sustain this going forward, and then leverage this to build the structures that will be a requisite for accelerated economic growth going forward, is what we have been lacking, and that is what we are all looking forward to going into the second and third years of this government. So I think on the whole, and on the surface, it's very impressive what we are seeing so far in terms of the economic outcome.
See, these figures that they are putting out, are these figures that favor more the multinationals and the bigger companies, and that these figures may never mean anything to Akwele, doing 20 balls of kinky to survive on, or Kwame, who saws 2 yards of sticks to make a living. These figures may not necessarily affect them, and even though they probably form 80% of us, these are figures that the big oil multinationals will benefit from.
Now, it's not exactly so. Reason I'm saying this, so liking the economy to the human being, the body, you have many parts. I mean, your head, your leg, your stomach, your eyes, everything. Now, the health of those parts in totality actually makes or constitute what is called your well-being. Now, if one part of the body, I mean, minute as it may be a headache, it may be some speck in your eye, it may be something with your ear, it may be something with one tooth or something. I mean, disorder in one area of that sector or that part of your body actually affects the whole body. It affects your well-being, it affects your happiness. That is really what the economy looks like. The kinky seller on the street, the mason that goes about his daily job, every other person that goes about his daily stuff, I mean, trying to make a survival on a daily basis, I mean, that's so hoping that someone somehow becomes a customer. So if you don't give a contract to, say, Mason A to build a house for you, or you don't have money in your pocket to contract, say, Mason B to build a house for you, he doesn't have job. Same way, if you put your kinky by the roadside and you get no one to buy because there is no money, I mean, they don't have job. The inflation, the exchange rate, interest rates, and all of these, they are fundamental to our economy. It might not make sense to everybody equally because some of these things are not even understood properly within our circles. But look at it this way. Inflation is basically the rate at which prices are changing. So from at the end of 2016, December, we ended the year with inflation of 15.4%. What it means is that between December 2015 and December 2016, the prices of the goods in the market, general goods in the market, has increased by some 15.4%. That is what really meant. At the end of 2017, we are saying inflation slowed from 15.4% to 11.8%. What that meant is that compared to between 2016 and 2017, now between 2016 and 2017 December, prices of goods which were 15.4 between 2015 and 2016 increased by that margin has now increased by 11.8%. Clearly, the rate at which prices are growing is actually slowing down. That is the meaning of inflation. What that means is that, I mean, if you planned your life based on a 15.4% increase in salaries or wages or your expenses generally, I mean, there is now a savings to you because prices have increased lesser than that previous level. So obviously, the growth in prices actually determines how much you can buy. The money you have in your pocket really, it doesn't matter. What matters is the price of the goods you're buying. So if the prices of those goods are increasing at a rate that you can't cope with, your money becomes useless. And that's what we call real money, really. I mean, the nominal money is you have 100,000 in your pocket, 200,000 in your pocket. But what that money can buy is actually the real value of that money. So declining inflation just tells that your standard of living may be improving because the cost of things are not increasing as much as they used to be. Stable inflation. Look, everything around us, almost everything you can think of is imported. The phone you're using, the laptop, everything around us. If your exchange rate is galloping, what it means is that a commodity may be sold in, say, the US at, say, $5. Right? Normally, if your exchange rate were 1:1, it should be selling 5 cedi domestically. The fact that exchange rate is depreciating means that that good that is worth, say, $1. Currently, we have a cedi, I mean, trading around 4 cedi 50 pesos. So for that 5 cedi worth of good, you are looking like 20 cedi plus. I mean, $5 worth of good, you are looking at 20 cedi plus. So it's important we stabilize the currency. That way, if Myanmar goes to China and then imports Pampers and all of those things to our babies, we can predictably say that within 2017 or 2018, the price of Pampers shouldn't go above, say, 5, 6, 7 cedis, so that you plan your life around that. So these things are critical. And then exchange interest rates and all those aggregates that are being talked about. If businesses don't expand and then create the job opportunities that we are all looking for, I mean, who will employ who? But business ability to expand really depends on how much capital they have. And so if interest rates are declining, which means they can now acquire capital from the banks at cheaper rates than they were previously, they are better able to expand their businesses, employ more people, so that Kojo Ama, who is on the street looking for job to do, can also find something to do, earn a living, out of which you can go and buy the kenke of that kenke seller. So the linkages are there. It's not really for the oil giants or the multinationals that are coming in. The linkages are really there for us. So it's important. I've always said, and I'll say it here, that economic stability, as we all seek, or as the ministers seem to be trumpeting, is not a sufficient goal in itself. It's necessary. We need that stability based on which we can attract the needed capital to expand our economy. If that stability is not there, that foreigner who will be seeking to buy bonds in Ghana, that foreigner you are seeking to bring X amount of billions to come and build railway from Accra to Tamale, will not come because he feels that the worth of his money will be depleted by the time he is ready to recoup his investment. Because if you are bringing the money at, say, X, maybe 4.5 CD to $1 exchange rate, by the time you might have recouped your investment, I mean, the CD depreciates to, say, a 10 CD to $1. I mean, your returns, yes, will come because it's in local CD, but by the time you convert it into your original currency and go back to your country, your resources are depleted. So I will not come. So the stability is a prerequisite for growth, the jobs we are looking for to happen. And I think that is what they are seeking to do, I mean, for this 1 year they've been in government. We've seen from...
Let's look at the stability area a little bit before we move on. You know, our stability in my Edumasa economics is very artificial, because we all know that you need to export as much as you import to sort of balance this trade deficit. And we don't do that. And you've named, you know, quite a few things on the table which have all come from somewhere. So in order for us to stabilize, it means we are trading cocoa, we are doing this, we're doing that. And we are talking about sustainability. So how is that working?
So it's in many fronts. Stability is really in many fronts. In prices, in your external sector, in exchange rate, in even the economy's outlook itself.
Let me pause here and let's welcome Kojo Sedeka, who's also an economic analyst. He's joining us via Skype. Hello, Kojo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. I have another economic analyst in the studio, Kwesi Boti. As soon as he lands, I will come to you. But thank you very much for joining.
You're welcome.
Okay, so the point I was making is this. The stability we're talking about is in many phases. We don't only talk about price stability, essentially inflation. We're also talking about exchange rate stability. We're talking about stability in the trade sector or external sector. Those variables are very important for getting the overall macroeconomic to be stable. If you observed, in 2017, we recorded a trade surplus for the first time. What it means is that, I mean, in a long while, what that means is that we exported really more than we imported in the period. How did we come about that? We exported more crude oil than previous periods. I mean, crude oil prices were firmer than they were in previous years. So that raised the volume of export proceeds from there. I mean, we export more gold than previously. Prices were much firmer. We export more cocoa, even though prices were weaker, the volume compensated. And then so we had very good business in the trade sector of the economy last year, as against our imports. So we ended the year with over 1 billion in trade surplus for the year. For the first time, we became net exporters of crude oil. That's a first start. On the import side, a number of things declined. Because we're producing gas domestically, our thermal plants are relying more on the gas from a turbo plant to power them. And so we reduce our import on those fronts and, of course, other consumables. How do we go on from there? It's sustaining those gains. How do we do it? Investment in petrochemical refining, investment in other sectors of the economy that can guarantee sustained export. That is where we get that stability from there. That is critical to stabilize the city.
Let me engage Kojo. Kojo, thanks for joining us. And obviously, we are looking at Ghana's economy. The finance minister painted quite a rosy picture. But I just want your preliminary comment on, you know, on the event, on the statement and the event, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you very much. I will take it from the point where the other friend just left it on issues of stability. When you notice that Ghana currently inflation is dipping, which is a good sign, and therefore the policy rate is also going down. And why these are happening is basically that the country is pursuing what we call inflation targeting. And in the inflation targeting, one thing about it is that as they are doing, they also look at other sectors of the economy and see their performance vis-a-vis what the monetary aggregates are. So that one has been something that we've been pursuing over years, and it's yielding some result as we going forward. And looking at the real sector also, certain things are falling in place. For example, as I said, inflation is going down. Trade volumes, international trade volumes are also expanding. Ghana is becoming a bit fertile ground for investors. However, in some, there are some challenges in the country that we need to look at. It is not just enough to have macroeconomic stability or fiscal discipline, and therefore all other things will fall in place. It doesn't work that way. We need to look at ease of doing business. And the ease of doing business now brings more investors on board. People will invest in the country, in financial instruments, and also build factories, and that employs people, put money in people's pockets. So then you can now say that your fiscal and as well as your monetary policies are yielding results. But where you leave the structural issues and concentrate only on the monetary or physical issues and leave the structural issues, you might not have the desired result that you want. You will always have your result that, okay, inflation is going down. We are running a thin budget deficit. The exchange rate is stabilized, but money is not in people's pockets. And the people, therefore, will say, we do not have money in the system. So whatever you're saying is it. So structural issues need to be looked at. And one structural issue that also the government is looking at is tax issues. And I think it's part of the fiscal consolidation that the government has been pursuing over years now. And it's very critical that we pay our tax and ensure that government has the required amount of money to create an enabling environment as well. It is, and therefore, when we have that, government can now free some resources for the private sector. Remember, government is the largest borrower in the economy. Government has more resources through tax and non-tax revenues, which is not necessary from borrowing. It can also free some resources for the private sector to operate with. And so it's a gamut of things that we need to look at, not necessarily just looking at inflation and the fiscal. Everything is.
Do I still have Kojo on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, Kojo, let me take you back. You mentioned something which I think is quite interesting, which is inflation targeting. We've gotten to a point where even people who don't understand what inflation is just want to see hear the figure and hear that, well, it's going down, so my buying a yard, and then we all just jump in this bandwagon, happy that inflation is moving downwards rather than upwards. Are we being ignorant in just getting all fixated about this inflation?
I would say no, we are not ignorant or fixated about it. It's a very, very key indicator in every economy. That inflation is a driver of so many things. But as I said earlier on, as we are driving inflation down, so therefore we expect that interest rates should be going down as well. Why interest rates are not going down? And the banks still have a wide spread. Like the bank spread means the lending rate and the borrowing rate, that's a wide difference in so you will be what? But also have a case who said, well, doing business is difficult. It's difficult to trace customers. It's difficult to do certain things. So we can't just lower our rates because inflation is going down. Okay. But another thing that I can also say is that normally when you have inflation or monetary aggregates are going down, one thing there is a lag between that and what actually happens. Okay, so you might have your inflation dropped in January, and you expect that the effect must be felt immediately in March. It cannot happen. There is a lag because people wait and watch. They wait and watch. Let's see what happens before they also react. So it's just a rational behavior of economic units. They always wait and watch what happens before they also react to it. So it will be too early to say everything is good and everything is rosy.
Because again, people are complaining that, look, with all these rosy things, we are not feeling it in our pockets. Could it be that, there's no synergy or integration? The finance ministry are there with all their best and intentions, doing what they are doing so that the economy moves in the right direction. Ministry of Labor is also there, doing everything. But, to date, as to whether we need more doctors to achieve this goal, whether we need more accountants or, computer scientists to achieve this goal, the human resource is just there trying their luck. You go to school and come out and see if somebody needs my services. There's no synergy. Could it be the reason why we don't feel it in our pockets? Because everybody's just doing their own thing.
I think you hit it right there on the head. For Ghana, I said it before that there is a problem with our policy coherence in the country. We do not have policy coherence in the country. Just as you said it, the Labor Ministry is doing something, the Finance Ministry is doing something, Agriculture is doing something. But we have never thought that if I want to attain a certain level of human resource development, for example, I want to train 10 medical doctors. I want to train 200 farm technicians. What does it take? We only calculate the amount that it takes. And we say, okay, for a doctor, it's 6,000 a year. That's fine. And then we end it there. But we need to link that to other sectors of the economy. And basically, that is what even the Sustainable Development Goals are telling us, that we need policy coherence. For example, if I want to build a classroom for students in certain area of the country. Hello, am I still on air?
Yes, you're on air.
Okay, thank you. And to ensure that people go to a particular school. Now, to have that policy coherence, it is not just enough. Those that take and give them we need to keep that.
Okay, I think the line is a bit distorted there, but I want to put the same question to you, Courage, where it looks as if we all mean well, but we're all doing our own thing. Ministry of Education just wants to send kids to school for free. Hey, Mumbai saying school for free. Agric says, hey, look, you know what? As for us, we want to do planting food and jobs. Come and plant food and jobs. Why are you saying, yes, the youth, you come and do this. So everybody is there doing their own thing. But, the youth ministry and labor is not saying, no, I need doctors. Therefore, education, give me doctors, so I push them here. So that and therefore, so what then happens is that you don't feel it in your pocket, because all the things that the Ministry of Finance is putting together, probably if you don't, match up to it, it takes a long time for it to trickle it down to you. Unless somebody builds a house or buy a wood or something, you don't get anything out of it.
Well, Nana, I can understand really that people are complaining that these things are not felt in their pockets. I can understand. And then I don't quite agree, fully with Kojo on the point he was trying to make before. Yes, there are issues of policy coherence that we need to, there is a need to unite or, sync whatever you are doing from the various sectors to actually get the economy going. To some extent, you can't say that everything is completely disjointed. There are some level of coherence or cooperation along the sectors. But really, I'm looking at it from this way and from the perspective of the government in power now. You see, they believe in private sector-led growth. That's their whole ideology. And then everything they are doing is towards that area. So let's get it this way. Economic change, inflation declining, exchange rate stabilizing, and all of that doesn't really put money into anyone's pocket. What it does is it creates the environment conducive for businesses to grow. Now, all of what they have done so far, stabilizing exchange rate, reducing inflation, and all of that, is what accounted for the steep decline in interest rate we've seen on 91-day bill and across the yield curve. When they came to power, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year bonds, in fact, we didn't have 15-year bond then, 10-year, 5-year, thereabout, they were all around 24%. Why are they there? The inflation, the interest rate investors demand on lending to you is actually determined by the level of inflation, the rate of inflation in the economy, the risk perception they have about you, and the ability to pay or otherwise, and of course a lot of other variables. In our specific case, you see, let me take you back a bit. Why did we go to IMF in 2015 April? We went to IMF because between 2009 and 2011, we actually went for a support program with the IMF. The programs they rolled out and all the disciplinary measures they put in place help us stabilize what we call fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is really nothing but a difference between how much you earn as revenue and how much you spent at the end of each year. Of course, if you add your arrears payment to it as a ratio of what your GDP, that is fiscal deficit. It tells the level at which you can borrow in any given year, because that represents the gap you are feeling that your revenue is not able to. The larger the size of that gap, the more likely you are to borrow, or the larger the amount you are likely to borrow. Now, if government borrows so much, what happens is that private sector, who are the engine of growth, do not have sufficient funds available to borrow, right? And the fact that your fiscal deficit is so high, and then your debt to GDP ratio, which is actually a measure of your debt sustainability, is also so high, you are unable to beat down rate. This government came and said, okay, we want to be disciplined. Even if the revenue are falling short, let's cut expenditure as a way of sustaining confidence in the economy. Through this approach and then what they are calling the reprofiling, shifting most of the debt. You see, we had in times past that, I think even in 2016, that every week, or let's say averagely, the bills or the government debt that are due to mature in a year are actually about 28% of the total debt portfolio. As we speak now, because of that deliberate reprofiling strategy, it's reduced to around 17.6% of the debt portfolio that is due to mature. That gives you the leverage or the platform to reduce interest rates. If interest rates are reducing on government borrowing, banks will be looking to lend to the private sector. Money should be available for them to build new businesses, expand existing ones, and undertake new investments that will create the jobs. So economic stability and everything we're talking about now is not an end in itself. It's just a means to an end. Once these things are stabilized and there's confidence in the economy, there will be money for people to spend. It takes time for some of these changes to reflect in our pockets.
Let me take a quick break and then come back, because that was my next question. How long does it take for it to reach down the pocket? Once all these things are put in place, does it take 6 months, a year and a half? At what point does all these inflation and GDP debt to ratio, what time does it end up in the pocket? Because that's all everybody says. The English is fine, but the pocket is dry. Don't go. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we're discussing Ghana's economy. But before we come to studio, let's just catch up with some of the messages that you put on Facebook. Now, the question was put out there. Well, that's what the minister said, that pay your taxes to feel the change in your pocket. He says if you see any guy in a fine suit talking about his pocket not being filled, ask them if they paid their taxes. Romeo Cortez says, I hope you will add it to your 2020 campaign message. She says, I hope this man is not charting the cause of the tax man, tech bear, he says. Kwesi Boti, Dr. Baumia said that the money for development is right here in Ghana. So Ghanaians should shut up and suffer. This is just the first gear and you are crying. Wait, you will very more and more.
Cry.
But probably, I guess, cry more and more. Charles Odro, Kwesi, do not worry about anything because it shall be well. Ampofu says, I hope so, bro. Bright Griffin says, make we pay tax, then go watch your family, right? Keep waiting. So these are some of the comments that people are saying. So I'm going to put two questions together. Number one, once you start doing all this economic engineering and everything is going through the right, I don't know if there's a prescribed time where things start to trickle down, because maybe in 6 months' time businesses set up, in the next 6 months' time they start employing people, so in 12 months' time you start filling your pocket. Are there any prescribed methods like that? Or any signs like that?
Not really. Of course, you could. They are doing this bearing in mind they have a 4-year tenure. There are no fast rules about, because you actually require the response of the economic actors who these policies affect, to respond to some of the things you are putting across. We've seen in 2017 that, well, a number of tax cuts were rolled out. All these are supposed to be fiscal stimulus towards people investing more, making business environment more conducive for people to invest. As a result, government has lost a little around 1 billion in taxes for that policy alone. The response will take time, because people will now evaluate what you're doing, take decisions based on their confidence in what you're doing. And so we see that non-oil GDP growth, which is actually a measure of the real economy, because oil GDP is growing, yes, but how many of us work in that sector? Most of us are in the non-oil sector. And then that is where our real benefits come from. It is when that non-oil sector of the economy is growing that it means there is money in the pockets of people, right? So the policies that will now take time. And then once businesses take investment decisions, 1 year, 2 year, 6 months, depending on what kind of business you're doing, before the actual result to start coming out. So we saw in Q3 that non-oil GDP, which was 3.9% in Q1, about 4% in Q2, grew about 5.9% in Q3 alone. And then it's even expected to be stronger in Q4. The responses are coming. Now, it is when that sector, like I said, grows faster that people will begin to feel this in their pocket. Let me try to tell you why we can't reasonably expect money in our pockets now. In our part of the world, Africa, where infrastructural deficits are paramount, businesses do not have the required levels of capital to generate jobs and the income levels in the economy. It requires the government to spend quite heavily. In 2017, because we want to sustain the fiscal outlook and then balance the fiscal risk so that we can attract the needed investment, government, in response to revenue shortfalls, cuts expenditure on goods and services, cut expenditure on CAPEX, capital expenditure, and then cut expenditure or transfer to statutory funds. Now, let's ask ourselves, the goods and services, that is government purchasing to their agencies and their offices and stuff. That is where the market women get money. The CAPEX, constructing roads, constructing bridges, schools, and all of that, that is where the artisans get job to do. If government is not spending as much in those areas, you can't reasonably get money in their pockets, right? And the reason they are not spending because they are not generating the monies. I guess that informed the answer he's giving, that if you want to feel the money in your pocket, pay your taxes. Because if we're paying our taxes, government would have spent as much as they had a limit to spend a little around 55 billion last year. What did they do? They are spending much, much less than that, about 9.3% less than what they plan to spend. Reason, they can't generate the revenue. In times past, yes, we will not generate revenue, but we will spend that much, destroy the economic outlook, and then people who have the money do not even feel the confidence to invest domestically. But then the outlook now, or what they are seeking to do now, is that if we can't generate the revenue, we don't spend. So people won't have money in their pocket. And that is why, if you see in 2018, there are a number of measures aimed at increasing revenue generation, from the tax stamp thing they are bringing on board, which is excise tax anyway, that ought to be paid, but we are not paying, so they are finding new ways of collecting them. You can talk of the fiscal electronic devices and all those other innovative measures they think they are bringing on board. That should hopefully raise revenue. If revenue goes up that much, there is leverage, or there is room to spend more. That is when we'll begin to feel the money in our pocket.
Correct, but you see, if you summing everything up, debt to GDP is going downwards. CD is stable. Borrowing, they're not borrowing as much as they used to. The statutory payments up to date. NHIS, I know they, say
they've cleared some of their arrears according to what they are telling us. Yeah.
They've instituted free SHS.
Yeah.
Teachers now have the allowances. Nurses have the allowances, and this is all within 1 year. What's suffering for all this gain? I mean, because there's no free lunch, as the economics says. So, what's suffering?
So you are not seeing roads being constructed. You are not seeing new schools being built. You are not seeing the bumper increases in wages and salaries. And then, of course, all the other things that I talked about. I mean, the goods and services to the public sector for which they can work. And then, of course, all the other capital expenditure items that they need to spend on. I mean, those are the things that are suffering. But, of course, something has to give for something to gain. At any point in time, it should be a dialogue. What is more important? If you ask me, do we need nurses' allowance restored? I do not think so. If you ask me, do we need, what are the other things that is restored? I do not think so, because the revenues are not there. But because of the political gimmickry, and let me point this out, the politics cannot be taken out of all of this. The politics is that His Excellency Dr. Bawumia, somewhere when inflation was in single digits under the leadership of Professor Tamils, said that, well, inflation is declining, it's in single digits, but we can't feel it in our pockets. Politics. When it favors you, you sing the song. But when it is against you, you go on the defensive. That is the same tune. It's the same song they are playing to them for them to dance to. I think some credibility in analyzing, or some diligence in analyzing economic issues. I mean, let's look Ghanaians in the face and tell them what the truth is, what we think is the right approach. I don't think the Fidel Castro and then all the other great people of Malaysia, Singapore that changed their economies actually brought relief to their people in a day or in their time. I don't think we all hail Dr. Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana today because in his time everything was rosy. But the steps he took, the resoluteness in his decisions at the time is what has, stayed behind for posterity today to judge. I think we need to sacrifice something to gain something. If Ghana will develop at a pace that Malaysia is doing, at the pace Singapore is doing and all of that, and really we all started our economic trajectory around the same time, we need to make the sacrifices. They made their sacrifices in the past. What are we doing now? We're looking at instant gratification. We're looking at the next election, so we can't take the steps. I think what this government is doing is good. The stability they are bringing to the economy is good. Now, will they do this in 2019 when election is approaching and all the promises they put across are not being fulfilled and people are holding them to it? That is really where the test case will be for me. As it stands now, there are no pressures. You can flex your muscle and then say we are limiting expenditure because we can't generate so much revenue. It is necessary, it's important, but will you do this in 2020? Will you do this in 2019? That is me, when you do it around those times, that is when I will take you serious. But as it stands now, it looks good.
I want to take a break, and then when you come back, you mentioned something about truth. So we'll go back and look about the truth economy. Don't go away. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we're looking at the economy, and Courage mentioned truth, so I just wanted to find out some truth. Now, how much of all this could you say that, look, maybe Tepe started the foundation and we built upon it? Because sometimes when you listen to the government, it's as if they discovered the country. It was all a virgin forest, declared it, built the schools and everything, and started the economy afresh. Could some of this be credited to the past and say, well, they set the ball rolling, maybe we accelerated it or we built upon it?
Certainly, Nana, I agree with you. And that's the problem I also have with the narrative that is coming from the current leadership. You see, let's face it, we were in a precarious situation in times past. In 2014, when we started the program, we were running a fiscal deficit that is in the double digits. It was the reason we went to the IMF. We preferred a homegrown policy and then just needed their support and supervision to achieve them, right? first year of implementation, we were largely on course. I mean, I think at the end of 2015, the fiscal deficit declined from 10.2% to, I mean, some 6.5%. And then we were supposed to get to 5% at the end of 2016. What did we see in 2016? The election pressures and the desire or the attempt to stay and hold on to power, given that the backlash coming from the NPP actually caused them to go into the overdrive. We ended with 9.4% at the end of 2016. Now, so let's look at it holistically. This IMA program we're running now brought along a lot of structural reforms that hopefully will sustain the economy's performance going forward. The gift-made system we're using now, that is actually a way of managing our revenue expenditure in a way that is prudent, so that when you don't have revenues, you don't spend, came out of that program. The Public Financial Management Act, the framework within which fiscal administration is actually being carried out, and all the sanctions for the violations of that came out of that program. I mean, and a host of others. The single treasury account that mobilizes all of government revenues with the central bank so they don't need to go borrowing when they have money sitting in accounts. All of those came out of those programs. Right? So the framework is there, the structure was set, and then SETECPE implemented it in 2015 but failed to do so in 2016 because it's politically prudent to do so. So I will attribute it to him that the infrastructure has been set. At the time the NDC exited power, inflation was on a downward trend. Interest rates were declining. CD was very stable, I mean, relatively in 2016. Because if you look at the year before, we had about 15.7% or so depreciation in the CD. In 2016, we ended with a 9.7% depreciation. That's a remarkable improvement. So already, and then of course, we ended 2016 with a balance of payment surplus, even though it's more, but it was a surplus. Those were the positive trends that began, I mean, were emerging at the time they exited power. So the framework is there. I would acknowledge that it took a lot of commitment to be able to achieve the outcomes we are achieving now. But the framework, the infrastructure has been laid down. And I think it's proper when we give credit when it's due. It's not as though government implemented free SHS and then the schools in which the students are going to were all built by this government. I don't know of any new school that has been built yet. So when you are analyzing it, you look at it in that context. Of course, you inherited some debt in some sectors of the economy when you came, in NHIS and road contracts and all of that. But of course, you also inherited some projects that were ending that you came to meet, and then they are to the benefit of the nation now. I think government is a continuum. And if we look at it that way, I mean, you will not keep hammering on the ills of the past, but you focus on solving them. While they are focusing, you know, some people like to rejoice in, I mean, okay, make it look as if it's impossible, so that when you do it, you become the king, or, I mean, the maestro or something, and others are humble at doing it. It appears that, I mean, the more you make your colleague look dark, the brighter you become. But I think we can all look bright, or we can all look good, I mean, doing it in different ways. We may disagree on the approaches to achieving a national goal, but that doesn't take the credit away from someone when he started something. For me, that is a major problem I have with the current administration.
Let me take a couple of messages. Yakubu Ibn Chamba says, in as much as I feel some citizens are deliberately refusing with impunity to fulfill their tax obligation, I also think that if government pays workers very well, the citizenry would not agree on their tax, renegade on their tax obligation. Charles Odro, God bless you, Ken. Really, the battle is of the Lord. Efo Selom says, haha, funny. Abubakar says, after abolishing the so-called nuisance tax, which ones are left for us to pay? 419 government. And Lady Dinah Dokua says, if you don't pay taxes, where do you expect government to get money from? Amankwa Percy says, absolutely, if we want to receive more from the government, then I think we should be willing to pay more. And then Nasa Hassan says, enough of the talking, Honorable Minister. James Kathleen says, the MPP government should talk something serious about the the teachers' salaries, arrears, and stop misbehavior in what they're doing. That do not. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back. Come back into studio and round up. Okay, I think that's it. That's it. My director is kicking me off air. But let me say thank you very much to Courage Kwesi Boti. He's an economic analyst from Data Bank.
Thank you, Nana.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
A very good evening to you, Alistair.
Great. And I hope that at least you got an input of the English economy and the pocket economy. Tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you very much for watching.